Hello, everyone, and welcome to Body Bags. I'm your reviewer for tonight. I am the Nightwalker from Horror Heaven77. If you get a chance, please go and check out my channel. It's pretty good. If you like horror, you're gonna love my channel. Anyway, enough with this shameless self promotion. Let's get right to it. Okay, I know if anybody's watching this, somebody's probably like, exactly why did you want to talk about Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013? What could you really have to say about it? And here's the thing. Here lately, I've been watching some YouTube reviews about you know the movie, and one thing that I've been kind of noticing in some of these reviews. Now, I mean, if people don't like the movie, that's fine. Me personally, I think it's kind of middle of the road. I certainly don't think it's the best movie in the franchise by a long shot, but I don't think it's absolutely the worst one either. In my opinion, the absolute worst movie in the franchise would have to be Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation. This one here, at least I can find a couple of redeemable qualities about it, but I understand, this movie's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. I know a lot of people don't like this movie, and that's fine. If you don't like it, you don't have to. But the thing that I've been noticing is that in some of these YouTube reviews, what's making me angry is the fact that a lot of people are just making things up. If you don't like the movie, and there are legitimate reasons why you don't have to like this movie. Okay, first of all, the timeline. Now that's one thing I will never defend on this movie. Okay, they bitched up the timeline because this is supposed to be a direct sequel to the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it doesn't make sense. That they screwed up the timeline. I mean, obviously, because the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes place in 1973. This one takes place in 2013. So, that's about 40 years later. And clearly, the main character, Heather, played by Alexandra Daddario, who easily has got to be one of the most beautiful women in the world. I mean, she could definitely be in the top 10 of all time most beautiful women. But here's the thing. I mean, obviously, you watch this movie, the girl can't be any more than her 20s. So she's definitely not in her 40s. And it's clear that this movie, now, if it was 20 years later, this movie would take place in the 90s, not in present day. They bitched up the timeline. So I can't defend that, nor would I ever defend that. They messed up, and they shouldn't have done that. Okay, there are other reasons you shouldn't have to like this movie. You could say, okay, it strays too much from the formula of the Chainsaw Massacre movies. I don't like that. That's another thing you could say you don't like, and that would be perfectly logical. Another thing too is like in this movie, they try to make Leatherface just a little more sympathetic, which you see there. But and that's the thing, it's like if people come and say, hey, I don't think I should have to sympathize with Leatherface. All right, that makes perfect degree of sense. I could see that, but there are legitimate reasons to not like this movie. But when I hear YouTube reviewers making stuff up, that's what gets my goat about the whole thing. I mean, the story, it's pretty simple, okay? It's supposed to take place like right after the events of the original film. And, Sally Hardesty, the movie opens with like, 2.5 minutes of, shots from the original film and give you an idea of kind of build you up to what's going on. And the thing is like one thing everybody seems to say in a lot of these reviews is like by the time the sheriff gets out to the Sawyer farmhouse, it's like, oh, this all happens within the span of like 10 to 30 minutes. And it's like, no, first of all, okay, it's like, yeah, Sally gets in the truck, she gets away at the end of the movie, but we don't know how long it takes her to get to the police station. We don't know how long it takes for the sheriff to get to the farmhouse. So, it could be a number instead of like 20 minutes, it could be like in the span of an hour, maybe longer. So I mean, you could argue about that. One other thing that a lot of people always seem to say is like, oh yeah, it makes a hell of a lot of sense that there was a woman and a baby in the house that was here for the whole freaking time of the original movie. Come on, go watch the original movie. There was never a woman and a baby in the house. Now, unless I got like a director's cut that nobody had ever seen before, um, I, I'm watching this movie, and at the beginning of the movie, there's a shot. I call it the I call it the naked gunshot, where you're kind of seeing like from the point of view of the police lights on top of the car. And I was actually kind of waiting for the Naked Gun theme to come on. But anyway, the car is approaching the house. Now, like I said, unless I'm watching a different version that nobody else had ever seen, like the police car is heading towards the house. Now you see the Sawyer farmhouse. This car pulls up, and out of the driver's side, one of the guys gets out, and out of the passenger side, the woman with the baby gets out, and they run into the house. As the sheriff is approaching the house, the guy and the woman with the baby are running into the house. So, that would lead me to believe that the woman and the baby were never in the house the entire time of the original movie. But, I hear some of these YouTube reviewers saying, no, that's what happened. A woman and a baby were in the house the entire time. But also, too, it's like, well, you kind of got to take a lot of what these reviewers say with a grain of salt, because I've even heard, even some of these videos, they flat out say, I don't like the movie, so I'm not even going to bother to judge it fairly. I'm just going to say whatever the hell I want about it, whether it happens in the movie or not. So anyway, yeah, the sheriff gets out there. He wants to take care of the situation, peacefully. And, you got Drayton Sawyer. Unfortunately, the late great Jim Seadow wasn't able to come back and reprise his role. I don't know, and Bill Moseley took up, the part, and he's fine, but he's only in there for a couple of minutes. You got these other characters that are all of a sudden in the house. Now, I mean, that's kind of hard to explain. It's like I don't know where these guys came from. I don't know if they're like, you could argue that they were in the house during the events of the whole movie, or you could also say that maybe they were just neighbors of the Sawyers, people who knew Drayton and knew Leatherface, who we find out in this movie his name's actually Jebediah Sawyer. You could say that maybe like, okay, well, maybe they were neighbors of the Sawyers. Maybe they're people who knew Leatherface, who knew Drayton, and just kind of like knew who they were, and knew like, well, people leave them alone, they don't bother anybody. I don't know. So that's the thing. You can sit there argue that sort of thing for hours, but one of these guys is played by Gunnar Hansen, and it's great to see him as a little tiny role in the movie. And Bill Moseley is Drayton. Okay, that's fine. I mean, he took up the mantle from Jim. But I don't know. Did they ever ask Ed Neal? I'm just curious about that. Did anybody ever? I don't know. Maybe they figure like the continuity would make. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. The continuity is really a big thing in these movies, right? But anyway, though, getting back to it. So the sheriff, he decides he wants to take Jeb in and just peacefully like put him in jail. He even agrees. Gunnar Hansen says, if he comes out and he surrenders, he gets a good lawyer. And the sheriff's like, I agree. Okay, fine. He'll be treated fairly and as fairly as he should be and everything else for the crimes and all that stuff. But I need him to come out. So they decide they're going to resolve it peacefully. And so, but then what ends up happening is this posse shows up and they decide, no, they're going to do things, old fashioned lynch mob style. And the sheriff is telling him, back off. I've already handled the situation, all this other kind of stuff. Now you have this guy, Bert Hartman, and this guy, he's like, no, screw you. We're going to, I run this place. The guy, ultimately he becomes the mayor, but, even at this point, he's not the mayor, but he thinks he runs the whole show. So, they decide that, they're not going to, handle the situation or let the sheriff handle it. They're just going to lynch them and kill them all and stuff like that. So they start a shootout and everything. And, you can't help but, be reminded of the beginning of Devil's Rejects. I know I was, especially when you got Bill Moseley in there and stuff. So anyway, so they have a shootout and all this stuff. John Dugan, who, you get a chance to follow John Dugan on Facebook. He's pretty cool. But yeah, John Dugan comes back to play Grandpa after all these years. But Drayton gets killed, Grandpa gets killed, all this stuff. Gunnar Hansen's character gets killed. Leatherface somehow manages to escape. They don't explain it, they don't show it, but he just somehow manages to escape. So anyway, so he gets away, and then later on they're going through the ashes and stuff like that. They find his old chainsaw, and one of them's like, yeah, I'm gonna take this. It's like my trophy and stuff like that. Well, anyway, one of the guys from the lynch mob, he's searching, and they, if you remember the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they had that area that was kind of netted off where they housed the cars and the trucks of all the people that they killed. And this guy finds the woman and the baby, and he decides he's going to go ahead and he's going to he takes the baby, but then he stomps the woman's head in with his boot, kills her. Then he takes the baby, and they decide to raise it as their own, and then that's pretty much where the movie. That's where the connection ends. Then it's supposed to be like 20 years later, but obviously we're 40 years later because now it's modern day, and you got Heather played by the absolutely gorgeous Heather Daddario or Alexandra Daddario. Heather Daddario, Alexandra Daddario here, who I remember like in. See, that's what I'm talking about. When I say like some of these reviewers are just like they're just saying stuff just because they don't like the movie. It's like one guy actually complained of the fact that the first time we see her, she's wearing makeup to work. She's working as a butcher in a grocery store, and yet she wears makeup to work. Yeah, because I mean, women never wear makeup to work. I mean, that's not a thing. Since when did a woman ever put makeup on? A woman's like, women don't do that. They don't go like, yeah, I'm getting ready to go to work, so yeah, I'm just gonna put some eyeshadow and some stuff on, kind of dress up a little bit so I can go to work. Yeah, women never do that. Anyway, but that was his argument was the fact, she, she wore makeup to go to work. But anyway, so and then we find out, she's got her friend played by Tania Raymonde, who, and then she's got her boyfriend played by Trey Songz, who another. This is kind of killing that whole thing about putting hip hop artists into your horror movies. See, that was kind of a thing back in the late '90s after Scream and stuff. That seemed like to be like a fad that was coming in. It's like, oh, you need to put like the up and coming like current hip hop artists in your horror movies, but they had to live. Well, Freddy versus Jason kind of changed that when Jason brutally kills Kelly Rowland. I'm sorry, Jesus. But anyway, so it kills her off. So it's like we got Trey Songz in here, but I'm gonna try not to give away too much, but he doesn't fare so well in this movie. But anyway, so at this point, the character of Heather, she was brought up by these, white trash people, and it turns out they're horrible to her. They treat her despicably, and she doesn't understand why, and she doesn't know why everybody's so mean to her. And she's like trying to figure out what her place in the world is, and she's kind of confused. And she's with her boyfriend Ryan, played by Trey Songz, and they decide with her friend, who we find out is actually having an affair with her boyfriend. Ryan and this girl are having an affair behind Heather's back. They decide they're going to invite them, and plus this other guy, Kenny, who Kenny is actually okay. One second, Kenny is actually like the one guy in this movie I really feel sorry for because he seemed like a good guy. He's just he's kind of along for the ride. He's trying to be friends with everybody. He's trying, he decides he wants to go ahead and cook dinner for everybody and all that kind of stuff. And then he ends up getting killed in the most gruesome way in the movie. Spoiler alert, but Leatherface hangs him on a meat hook. And then, being a good guy, it's like Leatherface looks like he's going to go after Heather. And then, he's like, Kenny, kind of like reaches out to grab him and, pisses off Leatherface. So Leatherface takes his chainsaw and saws him in half. So anyway, so Heather gets this letter that her grandmother died. This grandmother she never knew. Turns out that the grandmother is actually played by Marilyn Burns, the late great Marilyn Burns from the original. So they decide, no, we're going to go ahead and we're going to, instead of going to New Orleans to party, which was their original plan, she's going to go. She found out she inherited this big estate, and they decide, well, let's go down and check it out. What the hell, it could be fun, and so they go on down there. And okay, one thing I will admit, and people have complained about this, and I agree with this. Okay, why did you need kids in a van again? Okay, why did you need another scene of girls being attacked by Leatherface in a van? I get that because that's just taking off from the remake already did that. You're just kind of copying there. So I get that. See, like I said, there are legitimate reasons you don't have to like this movie, and I get that. But anyway, so they're going down. Of course, they got to pick up a hitchhiker. But in this scenario, the hitchhiker is this guy who looks like he should be posing for Vogue magazine. I don't know. I don't look at that stuff. Anyway, but so they pick him up. They go to the house, and then we find out that Leatherface has actually been hiding in this house the entire time. And, she's given this letter, which she doesn't read till the end of the movie, and the letter does say that Leatherface is in there. But then again, too, she's distracted by her friend, and that was like one thing. Why doesn't she read the letter immediately? It's like, well, she's kind of distracted by the fact she now owns this big mansion and she has all this money, and yeah, she's doing pretty well for herself now, and her friends are distracting her and all this other kind of stuff. So, but then we find out, yeah, Leatherface is actually hiding in the basement, and he starts to emerge, and one by one, these kids start to get bumped off, and then Heather manages to get away. You got the scene at a carnival, which I understood it was supposed to be like a much bigger deal. Where Leatherface was supposed to be going around sawing people down left and right, but then again, too, that was the thing. They're trying to get you to sympathize with him. So if you had Leatherface doing that, then people wouldn't sympathize with him, I guess. But I mean, of course, you sympathize with him from the beginning, right? Anyway, so yeah, we find out that Burt Hartman, he's now the mayor, who is, he is the leader of the lynch mob. They decide that they want to finish what they started. They thought they killed Jeb Sawyer, but it turns out no. It turns out he'd been trying to go after Verna Carson for years, who is, you know, the basically we find out in the movie Leatherface, she's Leatherface's mom. But so anyway, he decides he not only does he want to take out Leatherface, but he wants to take out Heather because even though Heather throughout the whole movie she doesn't understand really what's going on, but pretty much guilt by association, Hartman wants to take her out too. He wants her to pretty much get wasted too. So ultimately, what ends up happening is that Heather realizing that she's got nowhere to go. Her friends are dead. Uh, you know, her friends are dead. This lynch mob is coming after her because she's, even though she had nothing to do with any of the murders or any of that stuff, um, you know, they pretty much they want to kill her too, just because she shares the same bloodline as Leatherface. So because they're related, they want to kill her too, and they talk about how they're gonna kill her and they're gonna kill him and blah 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 and all this kind of stuff. So ultimately, her and Leatherface team up, and you got the sheriff who still was the sheriff from back in the day. He's still the sheriff, and so so he figures into it. So I'm gonna try not to give away too much more of the movie, but I'm sure a lot of you've already seen it. And like I said, there are reasons to not like this movie. I get it, but like I said, that's the thing that just irks me is when I've seen these reviews where people are just making stuff up and you don't like the movie. That's fine, but at least be fair about it. It's like when I'm sitting here, hearing somebody saying like, yeah, the thing is, man, it's like, Heather, she was upset when her boyfriend got killed. She was upset when her friends got killed. You know, it's like, yeah, you never see her crying about it or anything. Like I said, unless I watched a version of the movie that nobody else saw, there's a scene where, after she's saved at the carnival, she's in a police station, and Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son, plays the deputy. He's going in to give her a shirt, and she's sitting there. The woman is crying her eyes out, and she's sniffling and everything else. Obviously because she's sad. What happened to her friends, what happened to her boyfriend. Brings up another point. Okay, in the movie, I've heard people sit there and say like, yeah, she was upset that her boyfriend cheated. She didn't even know. How the hell could she have known that her boyfriend cheated on her? She never knew that. And it's like, well, there's a scene in the movie where Leatherface is going after Ryan and the friend. They're in the barn, and people, what I'm talking about. So anyway, it's like Leatherface starts sawing down the door. She grabs a shotgun and says, "Welcome to Texas, motherfucker," and shoots at the door. But then, Heather busts through the door in the van, and okay, so she busts through the door in the van. Okay, first of all, she didn't know where her boyfriend and this girl were. She finds out they're in the barn. Okay, this friend of hers, supposed to be her best friend, she's standing there wearing only her panties and his shirt, and he's standing there only wearing his pants. I think women could put two and two together. You don't exactly have to be Albert Einstein to figure out what these two were doing in there. So I think she could kind of get the idea of what they were doing in there. So, especially like, why the hell is she only wearing her underwear and his shirt, and all he's got on is his pair of pants? That's it. So yeah, I think I think women can kind of put those things together. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I know I'm going too long with this, but um, overall, I think this movie is fair. Like I said, I'm middle of the road, And like another thing too that people have complained about was, oh man, why does every Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie always have to have a damn dinner scene in it? This one doesn't. And people, then these exact same people who say this stuff, then they turn around, well, you know what? I don't like this movie because it doesn't follow the same storyline as the other movies do. So it's like, oh my God, good Lord. I mean, it's like I said, if you don't like the movie, that's fine. I understand that. There are reasons you don't have to like it. Personally, I think it's just okay. I don't think it's the best. Yeah, it's got some problems to it, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. But for me, I'm just middle of the road. Um, but like I said, if you're gonna judge it, if you don't like it, there are plenty of legitimate reasons for you not to like it. But at least judge it fairly. That's all I'm saying. You know, don't sit there and make things up. Don't sit there and like I said, unless I watch the version of the movie that nobody else ever saw. But anyway, that's pretty much going to do it. Like I said, I've gone on way too long with this already, but yeah, like I said, to me, not the worst one in the franchise. To me, that would definitely have to go to Next Generation, which I have to admit though, Kim Hinkle made a sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, but that's called Butcher Boys. I haven't seen that one yet, so I can't tell if that's actually the worst one. But yeah, for me, Next Generation probably has to be the worst one. But anyway, that's it. So I'm sorry this video went over 20 minutes. I didn't mean for that to happen. But if anybody took the time to watch this video, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please like. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Body Bags channel. We got, reviewers doing a review every day of the week. I'm the Saturday reviewer. We got, there's 7 guys, all of us doing great stuff. Really good reviews. So please tune in, check us all out. And until then, yeah, I guess next time I get to see you will be next week when we review the Halloween franchise. So so good times. So take care, have a good night, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.